Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange Podcast. Stories by leaders for leaders to help you raise the bar on your own excellence, to release the potential inside of you. Now, here's today's podcast. Welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange. For over 7 years, we have been interviewing people to learn really good business skills to apply to the charitable organization that we lead. Sometimes they're stories of people been in the trenches, done some charitable work. Sometimes they're business professionals. Sometimes people have done multiple things. Today is a very interesting topic that probably grabs your attention. And the topic, my guest gave me, the title for the topic is How to Give $1 Million per Year to Charity. So my guest today is Mike Skrypnek. And Mike, hello, welcome to the Nonprofit Exchange. And tell people a little bit about you, please.
Hugh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I was looking forward to this all week. I know it is only Tuesday. My name is Mike Skrypnek. I'm a Canadian, and we were just covering a little bit about that. I live up here smack dab between Vancouver, British Columbia, and Whistler, which is one of the nicest cities in the planet and one of the best ski all-season resorts in the planet. So I feel blessed to be even in this corridor. That said, how did I get here? Well, I'm a business coach, and I consider myself more of a catalyst who provides that spark when a mid-career, impact-minded entrepreneur needs it. And we take care of a lot of things that gets business going, helps people grow, get in the right direction, and move ahead in a way that they never thought possible. And it all starts with that impact mindset, which became an extraordinarily important part of my business, my previous career, which I retired from a few years ago, and that is the financial service industry. I was an advisor in Calgary, Alberta, Canada for 22 years. And in that business, I hit a little bit of a sticking point and shifted my thinking into philanthropy, which I'm sure you're going to dig around a little bit about, and helped work on that $1 million a year goal.
So,
by the way, I've written a few books, 7 books.
Oh my goodness. I've got a list of them here. So that's fascinating. You've written a couple. So before we go to the books, you have a passion. I can tell by the way you speak. You have a passion for doing this. You've shifted careers and you're doing something you really love. So talk about why you're doing this.
The spark or the catalyst or coach, people want to call it coach and guide, but really it's being there at the right time with the right people when it matters the most and making the difference. And fortunately for me, I had this 22-year career in financial services. So analyzing businesses, looking at businesses, running my own enterprise. And so I had a lot of good perspective to understand how exactly to do it. So I understood business. But then there was this personal part of working with people. And the last decade of my financial services career, I worked with baby boomers trying to help them their assets, predominantly for the premise of giving back, give philanthropy. But in order to do philanthropy, you've got to reposition all your estate assets. And we did a lot of planning to pass money to the next generation. And so often what I would hear from these baby boomers is they would say, I've never heard that before. And I wish I would have learned what you just taught me 20 years ago. And, obviously I was happy that I was helping them at that moment, discovering things that they didn't know. But what was even more important was they would go on to say, and here are the other things I would have done. And so I had this incredible experience day after day for a decade, listening to people share what they would have done after their successful careers, what they would have done better, differently 20 years earlier. And I said, well, that's a thing. And for me, I had some philanthropic goals, which we'll discuss, that I achieved. And I said, well, where's the multiplier? Well, the multiplier for me was helping others with that information who are impact-minded and running their businesses, the entrepreneurs, business owners that were mid-career, 20 years younger. So I decided to turn my attention to coaching and help be that spark and that catalyst to help people get that realization they could do more today not 20 years later.
Wow. Start where you are.
Start where you are. But it does take a little bit. I think you have to have some, there's a lot, you could do it all the way along, but a little water under the bridge, helps in perspective and prioritizing. When we're young, starting a family and trying to keep everything afloat, it's a different ballgame.
It is. It is. So let me go right to the kill here. You got a book, one of many. Grow your business, get more freedom, give back. Entrepreneur Secrets to a Grow, Get, Give Life. Tell me about that.
This was a labor of love. I published it almost exactly a year ago. I headed out into 2020 with this brand new book. It was, at the time it was my fifth book, and I've since published 2 more books. 2020 was pretty prolific in regards to that. But Secrets to a Grow, Get, Give Life was basically the culmination of all the great advice that I needed to have success in my business, to enjoy the life I wanted, to have a great business, to have a fulfilling life, and ultimately to realize a pretty big impact. And so I just put them all in there. I didn't, when I set out with that $1 million goal, which again, I know we are getting to, I didn't know how to do what I was doing. I didn't know who to ask. And so I had to learn from coaches. I had to learn from mentors. I read voraciously, and I learned from the people who've did it all before. And I just did everything. I was the most coachable person you could get. I wasn't the egotistical person with my arms folded saying, just show me. I was just like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I went like crazy for 6 years doing that, invested over $200,000 in that experience with coaches and mentors and learning. And the result was it worked. Imagine that. You do really smart things that people tell you, other smart people who've been there before have done it. You do it and it works. So I said, well, that's going to be helpful information to anybody. And so I pushed it all into my book, Grow, Get, Give Life. And it really is the mantra I live by, which is, growing your business and your impact, getting more freedom, and making sure that you give back along the way.
So when can you start giving back?
Right away. You have to give. So a lot of, and entrepreneurs are pretty bad. So they're my market. They're my peeps, if you will, entrepreneurs, but they're pretty bad at pushing out their impact because they perceive they're rich or something they do when they've made it. Many people who have an impact mindset give anyways. They give in small ways, annual gifts, local charities, church, whatever organizations they support, but it's usually in incremental bits, right? And they go, well, I'll wait for the real philanthropy, for the hospital, put my name on the wing when I'm retired, when I sell my business, when I have that liquidity event. And I'm here to say that that's the backwards way to do it. And that's what I learned from the baby boomers that I counseled. And that's what I learned in my business is that was completely backwards. The moment I said, I want to give $1 million to charity every year, I realized, of course, I didn't know what I was doing, didn't have the money, and I didn't know how to do it. But it changed everything. It changed the conversation. It changed how I connected with clients, the relationships I had, the values conversations, everything changed. So when I made giving a priority first, the rest took care of itself.
Are you familiar with the writing of Napoleon Hill?
Of course.
Of course.
Mastermind all the time.
Yes. I was thinking, you'd be surprised how many people ask that and they don't know, especially in the nonprofit or church world. Because they think it's all about greed when it's really, if you think about the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect, and this one, the law of reciprocity. So there is a certain reciprocity to that mindset, is there?
Yeah, I think people misconstrue when giving is attached. They think that altruism is purely a non-reciprocal relationship, but reciprocity is, think of it at a deeper level. Like I like to think of energy at an atomic level, a quantum physics level. And basically, if you create space, things fill the space. You can just think about your bathtub with water. I mean, simply the moment there's space, water comes into that space, right? And so when you create space, and that is through giving, through servitude, serving, or tangible giving, once you've done that, you've opened yourself up, you've opened up that energy to allow other things to come back in. And without requesting reciprocity, it's a natural. And sometimes it's not a direct line. Reciprocity comes in mysterious ways, right? Your gift today may result in something somewhere else that wasn't connected directly to what you've done.
And it may go to someone else and not you.
Absolutely. And one of the best things on the giving side, the reciprocity side, if you're getting, you tend not to be quite as joyous, thankful, and gracious as the feeling that you get when you give. I mean, it's actually medically proven, it's scientifically proven that the giver receives a far bigger benefit than the receiver. And that's for a lot of reasons, because most often the receiver doesn't know where the gift came from directly.
Well, and you're talking about the right spirit in giving. There are people that pollute that whole law of reciprocity. What's in it for me? Or if I make a pledge to this religious TV station, what do I get as a prize? We've polluted that, but the simple form is the most powerful form. You give because you want to give. And I think you give proportionately wherever you are in your life. I'm remembering the story that Jesus told in the New Testament about the widow giving her 2 mites, and it was much greater gift than the wealthy person giving a lot more money. So it was a gift from the heart that meant something.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, the quid pro quo. We all should know how that's spelled. I mean, it was topic of the day a year ago. But the quid pro quo relationship is something that I have great disdain for. I had someone I spent a lot of time, giving him a lot of accolades, because I thought he really understood it. But behind closed doors, it was put your clients at risk, make sure you invest in this at this much, and then I'll give something. And that I thought that was just the most distasteful experience. And the supposed generosity of this man was always met with a connection to do something for me first, right? You do something for me, and that just destroys the spirit, and more than the spirit, but the benefit that you ultimately will receive through giving. And so, giving, you mentioned, it's not the size, it really is about time. I call it money, influence, and time. And, I know that there's other ways to describe it, but those 3 mechanisms, when I wrote my first book on philanthropy, back in 2009, 2010, when I published it in 11, that was one of the key elements, is that we don't all have certain abilities or desires, or should be giving, it's, money necessarily, or time, or influence. We all have to understand what it is that we bring to the table when we have to give us the greatest leverage, and to give in the way that has the biggest impact. And, sometimes it's not money. I mean, even Oprah, for example, I looked at Oprah, Bono, Branson, Bill Gates in my first book. And one of the big findings for me was Oprah understood her role of influence over money. And she had given massive amounts and directed massive amounts of capital. But what she really understood was the influence she had, and what her fundamental change was. Her biggest gift, in my opinion, was the gift of literacy in a new way to millions of people who otherwise would never have picked up a book. And so she understood that her medium was advocacy and influence, not the money side. That was just a byproduct.
So you threw around this big P word, philanthropy. You use several versions of that word. So let's, we'll have some people asking about or talking about philanthropy if we let some people ask questions, but talk about what that big P word means. I think we have a skewed definition of philanthropy.
Human, like in general society, we have a skewed view. Yeah, I mean, philanthropy is, to really quote it, it's a Webster's kind of, it's about giving back to humanity, right? It's for the love of humankind is really what philanthropy means. It's philo, which is a love or an attraction to, and anthropy, right? So us humans, a love or an impact for humankind is really the essence of it. And a lot of people believe that somehow a philanthropist is something that is not them. That is left for the ultra rich or the uber wealthy or the hierarchical or multi-generational giving. But it's not. It's for everyone, and everyone has the ability to give philanthropically and participate in that. I guess the other thing is from a financial services side, philanthropists, we're all philanthropists, and that's because we're all taxpayers. And whether you like it or not, as capitalist as you might think our societies are, they're not, because if we pay taxes, we're giving philanthropically to the government, which then in turn reassigns that capital to the needs of the rest of the population. And it might be in health, security, transportation, whatever, infrastructure, but it's there to help and create the safety net or security that we need as humans.
So you advised wealthy people of how to grow their money for how long?
Yeah, well, I did that for 22 years. And the shift for me was there I was in traffic in Calgary, Alberta in September, and it was snowing. And I was hating my life and my job at the time in my brand new Audi that I just thought, oh, I can do this. And I really hated what I was doing because right there and then in 2008, the sky was falling. The biggest financial crisis in history was happening. And I was listening to myself on the radio as I'm driving home stuck in traffic. And I was talking about how Lehman Brothers was going under. And I thought, boy, I'm not doing the right thing every day. It's just not working for me. And it was that moment where I said, well, I have to do what I do on weekends and evenings, which is be a pillar of the community, hang out with my family, give back, volunteer. I have to do that in my day. Here I was kind of living Wall Street, Gordon Gekko life, right? And I made that commitment then. And then shortly thereafter, I wrote on my whiteboard in the office, give back $1 million a year to charity. And that changed. That's where everything changed for me in my business and led me to exclusively work, present, and try to attract affluent or really millionaire next door baby boomers, people who are millionaires, but don't feel rich, and they weren't making the impact they thought, but they really would love to do more. And so I spent the next 6 years, pressing hard to build a business and in that 6 years, we managed to reach $12.5 million. So it was double what I anticipated. And I figured out how to run a business that could support it in the hoarding industry. And here I was trying to give every day.
In the hoarding industry. Mike, every now and then we have a blip in the internet and we lose a word or two. So you built a business to do what? We missed that word.
I built a business to help support people, millionaire next door, donors, affluent baby boomers, to give back in a way that they thought they wanted to, but ultimately we did a lot of planning, estate planning, and financial modeling for them.
So we've wiggled out the carrot here, how to give $1 million a year to charity, but let me go. We'll continue the suspense here. We'll get to that, I promise.
That's all good.
For Grow, you talk about building a mountain of credibility. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so we're going to continue to tease. So when I decided to put that big goal on my whiteboard, remember, this is the end of the financial crisis. I'm a financial advisor, and I wanted to serve charities, affluent donors, and the millionaire next door. And none of them trusted me. Well, they didn't trust my peer group, right? And it dawned on me that there was no way I was ever going to serve the people I wanted to serve with the altruism I wanted to extend if they didn't bring me into the room for the conversation. And that's where I learned that I needed to build a mountain of credibility. And it started with white papers, and then it ended up being a book. And as I said, I was on the radio. And so developing a process to position yourself so you have ubiquity every time your ideal client or the people you hope to serve turns around, they see something about you. And then to build the essence, the bricks, if you will, in the foundation of credibility, which means adding all the things that scale you up to the top, which ultimately would be a book, For some reason, books position you, being the author positions you at the top of that mountain of credibility, but it includes interviews, TVs, published articles, testimonials, referrals, all these things. And you combine all that, speaking opportunities, being a thought leader, when those are all in place, I went from a 5-minute, sorry, we're not interested, to an hour meeting with the people who I needed to serve. And in addition to that, they brought me along to the other side of the table along with them. So I was no longer either adversarial or in a client relationship. We were partners, and I was their trusted advisor in seeing it through.
Now, you advise entrepreneurs. Do you see nonprofit leaders as entrepreneurs?
I see it as a very similar mindset in the hope for innovation, but there are I talk about this in the couple of my books on philanthropy, and that is, there's, as much as an entrepreneur mindset might want to come in and affect, big change, and this is structurally going to be different how we run our charity. There are some very unique things about charity in the way they have to manage capital that ultimately changes some of the innovation and the creativity that could come with an entrepreneur, because they're stewards. An entrepreneur is not a steward of capital. In a business, they're there to reinvest that capital and take that chance and make that growth happen. Charity has to steward that capital for some sustained period of time, because the rainy days in a business may crush the business. Entrepreneur can restart. The beneficiaries of charity are far more desperate for the capital or whatever the resources that the charity provides. So innovation, yes. Innovative mindset, absolutely the same. There's a great crossover. Risk, different. And, charity is one of the few places where you push capital in and it may sit. It may completely be parked for a while, either in endowment or until the use is required. So there's this parking of capital that happens in addition to flowing through to the beneficiaries that's unique to charity. So I love mindsets of entrepreneurism, but it's difficult because the same risk profile cannot be held.
I would like to suggest that there's a hybrid in there. That
I agree.
We're too limited and we've inherited this scarcity thinking with the stupid word nonprofit, which is a lie. It's not a tax classification. I mean, it's sort of a tax classification, but IRS doesn't use that term. It's tax exempt, but it's not a philosophy. And so I think that you could bring some excitement to the world of, let's call us social entrepreneurs. We're doing something for the benefit of humankind. And I think we're too risk averse. So I think there's a middle ground. We don't invest our funds, and I'm talking to the preaching of the choir here. Your endowment fund, you don't have a high risk portfolio. You want to protect the corpus of the investment, but you also want to create enough interest that you can then spend that interest on something meaningful. So I think there's a stretching of this entrepreneur thing into thinking a little more creatively, especially today. We tend to, like the parable of the talents. Here I go back to the Bible again. The person that hoarded it lost everything. I'm going to take those from you. I'm going to give it to the person that took a chance. So I'm thinking some of your wisdom could inspire some nonprofit leaders to think in a more adventurous way, because we are at the cutting edge of creating a new paradigm for charities. I mean, everything we knew is off the table.
Absolutely. Across the board. I waded into controversy quite a bit. In my first book on philanthropy, which was written, 13 years ago, that I said that bad charities should fail, and that's, a charity is a bad charity when it becomes a charity unto itself.
Yeah, that's right.
Nonprofits have charitable causes, right? When they're poorly run, they become the charity. And so there's no way that's going to be effective at creating a social impact in the way that you'd hope. And so poor charities, and that's the hardest thing. If you're feeding soup line, right, and you say, well, we're not going to fund you anymore because you're terrible at this, that's a hard decision because you're going to maybe put 1,500 people or whatever out in the cold without food that night. But what's the good thing about that is other charity, no different than business, fill the vacuum, fill the void immediately. It's not some latent thing. It doesn't take years. It's amazing. It's just the same as the capitalist model where businesses go out of business and other better businesses fill the gap. And that's a perfectly fine thing. We have to embrace that you cannot turn your charitable cause into a charity itself. That's one of the biggest challenges. And then the other, Hugh, was I was commissioned to write a paper for let's say a national health organization. We'll leave it at that. And I suggested that their endowment was a dumb thing. I didn't say your endowment is dumb, but what I suggested is what is the purpose and the point in hoarding capital when the investment or the research or whatever is a foot away from the goal line for a cure, a treatment, or whatever, right? If you could save lives in a month and you're this far away and you choose not to fund it or change the trust agreements of your endowment, then you're responsible for whatever happens. And what I said is you need to create a new model, a hybrid model of how endowments work. And it's perfectly allowable, at least in Canada, within our rules. You can completely have a hybrid model where if you had an opportunity to solve, cure, or make that final difference, that you could fund it. It happened in the 80s and early 90s in AIDS. The AIDS organizations all went around. One trust said, this is stupid. We have everybody working on the same cure or treatments, and yet we're all in silos and we're all operating in this kind of endowment model. And they said, well, heck with it. We're going to go to the courts and we're going to bust our trust agreements. And they all did, collectively came together, and they quickly came up with some solutions and some treatments for that awful illness. So, I'm a little bit controversial.
Well, I don't think
it's
so.
Practical.
I think you're preaching the right sermon here. Are you familiar with the author, speaker, nonprofit leader Dan Pallotta?
I am, and as I wrote that, Pallotta had just subsequently had given his TED Talk where he was talking all about let the bad ones fail. Yeah, big time in agreement with a lot of what he says.
Yeah, he's pretty passionate about his perspective. I was thinking about the TED Talk, the way we think about charity is dead wrong. I don't know if you know that one, but
I don't know. I'm not familiar with it, or maybe not by title.
Yeah, he said the myth of overhead. You've got too much overhead. Well,
oh yeah, absolutely. Like that whole 35% or 15% fundraising quantities. You can't it takes money to make money. If you had a better social impact and you were spending 50% of your money versus a terrible impact and you were somehow shoestringing along at 15%, I would take the 50% any day.
Well, and it's how you're accounting for the expenditures. And that's really, in CenterVision, 100% of the money is overhead because it goes to the work of, I don't take a salary. It goes right to the work that we do for people. You could count it as 0 or you could count it as 100. It's just, how do you classify it on your P&L?
Absolutely.
And also the other ones, we can't pay good salaries. And the other one, the last one was, we can't spend money on marketing. So back to what you're saying, there's a business model in here. And that's why your great guest today is thinking from a business perspective, how do we upgrade our performance in this bad word, nonprofit? I had a guest a couple of years ago that really reformed my thinking. He said, it's not a for-profit business, it's a for-purpose business. We don't generate profits, we generate proceeds to go to the humanitarian efforts that we lead. So it's all in how we think about it. And really it's coming up. We've got a chance to reinvent how we do things now. And this curse is a blessing in a way that we have a chance to reset the bar. I want to go to a commercial sponsor moment here, but setting the bar, why is that important for us to rethink how we lead?
Well, mindset is the key to, quite frankly, if you're an entrepreneur in a corporation and your mindset is we're going to make this a social impact effort, their social impact is probably going to be better than a typical charity or nonprofit. The mindset of charity tends to get to be a point where it's institutional. And when you're in an institutional setting, it's about self-preservation and CYA. And when you limit the future potential by worrying about your position or ranking or whether or not you're going to have a job for the next 10 years, and the sole decision is not rock the boat, you're not going to change anything. In corporations, you take that approach, you get fired. You don't get to stay on, right? Either get rid of you or your upper management gets rid of you. So that is one of the biggest challenges. I saw that. It's so pervasive. It's one of the most painful things to watch is in organizations where institutionalization and that non-rocking the boat, status quo mentality seeps in so that people are, especially in the middle management part of charity, they're doing good every day, but really they're just protecting their jobs. That stuff is that drives me nuts.
It's a nonprofit card. We play the card. Oh, it's a nonprofit. Let's give them.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit. So we don't have to work as hard as others.
We're talking to Mike Skrypnek. It's his you got to pay attention here. SKRYPNEK, and it's on the website thenonprofitexchange.org, where we'll have this video, this audio, and a transcription of today's podcast interview of the Nonprofit Exchange, where we're going to talk about, I promise, how to give $1 million to charity every year. We can do the work that we're doing because we have some very gracious sponsors. And one sponsor that's helped us connect with our tribe is Easy Card. So if you'll take out your smartphone, no matter what variety you have, and send a text to this number, it's a 5-digit number, 64600. Open your texting program and send a text to 64600 and put in the word in the message. It's not a word, it's a shortening of leader, LDR. 64600, send LDR, push it, send it. So you'll get a link back and you'll get this. It's Centervision's Easy Card. It's a virtual card. It looks like an app. It's not an app. So if you look, you can know all about what we do here. You have all of our work in the palm of your hand. Look at there. There's the Nonprofit Exchange. Whoops, that's the magazine. Got to click the right button though. So Nonprofit Exchange, look at there, how to give $1 million per year to charity. And if you look, oh, there's the video of me showing you the video. So get that. Now the value for you at the very bottom here, the very bottom menu item, the tab is how to get your own Easy Card. So your people text in like you just did, and I'll send you texts when there's something important. I don't want to abuse you. Otherwise you do stop and we're done. But you can stay in touch with your board, with your volunteers. You can have different versions of these for different people in your community. So millennials respond immediately to text. Hey, we're going to have a gathering, 2:00, come over. And old guys like me, boomers, we put it on our calendar, but we forget to look at the calendar. So we get a text that says, hey, don't forget, we've got a board meeting in 2 hours. So it's a way for you to keep that relationship building going. EasyCard.com. Get your Centervision Easy Card, and we'll be in touch. We'll stay in touch. We'll build a relationship and do better together. So we talked about grow. Let's talk about get. What are your freedom rules?
Well, my freedom rules. So what happened is basically as I was building this business with this idea of giving back, I got really busy. You got really, all of a sudden I was speaking for 5 different charities, 4 times a year. I was running an investment management business and helping people do their wealth, running a family. So I said, well, I'm going to go insane. I'm back up to working 60 hours a day, a week rather. But this is something I love, but it will kill me. And so I created my freedom rules, and those were freedom rules really that were around hiring the right people, establishing the right processes, and bringing in the right systems. People give you freedom, right? The right people give you freedom. They remove you from some tasks that you shouldn't do, elevate your business, and add color to what you're doing. So people give you freedom. Processes gave me leverage, right? Because I was able to repeat things without reinventing. And systems gave me scale. And so people, processes, and systems, I always say, will set you free. And that's what I use to build my freedom rules around. So get more freedom was the second part.
And the last one is finally your give. Explain your big impact giving process. And this is where we get to the $1 million, right?
This is okay. This is where we get to $1 million, because it all starts with giving. It might be grow, get, give, but it's kind of should be give, grow, get, give. You know, it's kind of bookends it, because the mindset to bring it to the table for the conversation is what really kicks it all off. And when I did say that I was going to give $1 million to charity, I didn't have it and I didn't know how to do it. And I wasn't confused. I didn't think, boy, I'm going to somehow materialize $1 million that I can give every year. But I thought, well, what is it that I bring to the table? In my book, I had written about the things that you need to bring. And that is, you have to understand what it is that you uniquely bring to the table. And what I brought was this wealth of knowledge on the financial investment markets and the tools needed for planning to give. And then I also had the skills to communicate in a way that attracted people to a decision, to a conversation about giving, about planned giving in particular, planned giving that others had trouble making, bridging the gap. And so I had this personal ability to communicate both on stage in speaking as well through written word. And I happened to also have this great big toolkit. And so I said, well, let me just go out and do this. And over the course of the years, I would meet with people who said, I really love the concept of giving. I love the concept of dying without paying taxes in my estate. Can you help me do this? Because I'm really worried. Like the top ranking things, when we did a study of all the people I ever spoke with about this, their number one concern was taxes. The second one was, will I have enough money? The third one was, will I have enough to give to my kids? And last one was, I don't know if I have the right plan. And then charity hit at number 5. All the charities I would tell that said, were kind of sad to hear that, but it was the truth. So people were concerned that they were paying too much taxes, didn't have enough money, and couldn't give to their kids. So we solved those problems. And in doing so, we turned what people would normally be giving $1,000 or $2,000, and that's a pretty good annual gift every year. If you're giving $2,000 or $3,000 to a charity that you're committed to, that's amazing. But through the planning process, we could uncover ways that people could give $250,000, $500,000 to charity, preserve their estate, pay no taxes, pass on their wealth to their family, and commit to this legacy that would be with them for their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids. I always said, plan your legacy so that it can be realized through your grandchildren's eyes.
That's amazing. My brain is just catching up. So I'm
mindful of time. I'm trying to squeeze all this into short periods. So forgive my pace.
Absolutely. No. It's the big message that you're giving. So it occurs to me that a lot of us have a strange relationship with money, especially it's more so in the nonprofit leadership sector. So how is our relationship with money negative, and how does that hurt us?
Well, the constant is you never feel like you have enough. And that's a fear, right? My fear, if I never have enough money, it's not a fear that I don't know if I'll ever earn it. It's I'm afraid of what that means. It's very primal. First of all, it's food, shelter, clothing, protection of family. But then it gets to a different level where that scarcity sensation is, I won't be able to do the things I want to do in life, that my life will have the less meaning because I have less capital, less ability to do it. And using and when we view capital or finance or cash as a means, as an enabler, then the limitation or the potential limitation of that makes us very nervous. And, our first instinct is self-preservation. Now, if you can expand that and say, well, you can have exponentially better financial picture or results or even income than you thought if you just strategically execute certain things, then we allow ourselves to open up our minds to see what we could envision as an ideal future or an ideal current. I always found, Hugh, that one of the biggest difficulties, and I still find it with entrepreneurs as well, even, is that when you ask people to see their ideal future, it's often in the context of your current financial and geographic circumstances. And people have a very difficult time getting outside of their box to see their ultimate potential. And you go, well, you mean that's all you really wanted to do in your life? Like that's what it meant to you? And then they go, well, no. I want to, do this and I want to climb. And I'm like, well, why isn't that in your ideal future? Well, I'm looking around at what I've got and where we live, and I go, well, you don't have to live where you live. That's not a requirement. It's not mandatory. And financially, you may not have what you have today. In fact, you'll probably be richer. Most people are wealthier down the road than they were to begin with, especially after you get rid of the kids. Oh my gosh, after the kids start going to school and they're out of there, you suddenly become more wealthy. It's the disposable income. But but that said, to have them expand their thinking, suddenly what is amazing is they suddenly turn to what they can give back. When people expand and see their ideal futures, it's no longer about the scarcity mindset that confines most people to limit their giving. When they begin to see as big an opening as possible down the road, they actually innately begin to think about how they can help others. So I think it's a pretty amazing process that happens.
Well, when you, and some of that relationship with money prevents them from having adequate conversations with those people who could be supporters with their time and their talent and their money. So I think on the entrepreneur side, our relationship with money, like you said, I can't do that. I don't have enough money. I'm really limited. So on the entrepreneur side, when they could possibly give, when you say to somebody, you should give $1 million a year to charity. Well, I can't do that.
I can't do that. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But what if do you have 10,000 subscribers to your business? Yes, I do. Well, have you ever thought about getting $100 out of them in the next 2 years to charity? How do you do that? How do you redirect that capital to a charitable cause or something that had a benefit to society in a different way? How do you do that? And then when you begin to focus on those things, and that's a simple problem. How do we ask 10,000 people? How do we attract them to make a commitment of $100? How do we do that? My world is all about how do we start small and have a massive impact. So I work with, less people whenever possible. And our goal is to ultimately have that big, huge cosmic ripple effect. So the right people with the right ideas at the right time can have huge impact. So I would say, well, how do we make 2 people, give $500,000 and start there? And what do we need to do to make that happen? And can we run a business, or is that part of our business anyways? And it can work either way. I mean, you can either have a charity or a charitable entity that ultimately is so successful that there's buckets of money coming in, and it happens once in a while to the right charities and the right timing. Or you can have a business that leads with a social impact motive that becomes wildly successful too. Either way, the motive ultimately is the same. And again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. That's the mindset has to be about making that big impact.
And if you're not ready to give $1 million a year to charity, you go to Mike Skrypnek, SKRYPNEK.com, and you connect with Mike. He'll make sure it happens, or it will give you the pathway. It's up to you to make sure it happens.
Yeah. I don't have a dog in the circus, let's say, because I don't like the fight thing. I don't have the dog in the circus here. So I'm not a financial advisor any longer. I gave up those. I retired from that. I'm reformed in that way. But I certainly have perspective as a coach, as an owner, as a catalyst of change that helps people really see what their big future is going to be about.
Are you a philanthropist?
I say, yeah, absolutely. I have a love for humankind, and wherever I can make my impact, I do, but I use it to my talents in the best way possible.
Let me give you a multiple part question. Have you always been able to give, and have you always dedicated that? And I saw somewhere that you'd given over 12.5 million to charity. So, tell us about yourself. When did you start and how were you able to give a massive amount?
Okay. So now I was a part of that. I was not all 12 and a half. I helped guide that capital. That's what my business. I created a business that was the sole focus was to do $1 million a year of charitable giving.
Wow.
And that business helped other people who said, I give two, I helped them give 200,000. Right. So in that effort over a period of 6-7 years, we were able to redirect 12.5 million. Now, for me in my life, I grew up in Canada, the great thing is we don't have guns. So I grew up in an area that would otherwise be a place where a lot of shootings would have happened, but it wasn't very socioeconomically sound. We had drug dealers and thieves in our neighborhood. And I always had this innate desire to give back. I knew that the people around me didn't have the life that I was lucky to have. And they didn't have the love, they didn't have the security, and they didn't have the education, even though they were my neighbors. I always wanted to give back in some way. So I always felt inclined to do what I could. And I didn't understand until, I was almost 40. I was 38 when the realization that I can actually do something tangible and meaningful every year if I just commit to doing that. So I'd never given it the kind of thought. I mean, most people don't plan their giving, their charity, their philanthropy more than the time it takes them to investigate and research to buy a TV. Like, people, it always amazed me. Like, you want to have a difference or make a difference and be philanthropic, but you make a 5-minute decision to give $20 away to a charity that just asked for it today. And then you'll spend 2 weeks researching the next TV or computer screen you buy. So I don't know. I think you probably realign what's important and make a bigger plan and be more strategic about it. And the moment I was doing that, it all flowed. The funny thing is, Hugh, now, different than in the financial service industry, where if you make a claim, you have to back it up, right? Like, you have to have the numbers. Like, my firm said, oh yeah, right, you helped so-and-so give X amount of dollars. And I go, no, I have all the commitments. Like, I know those numbers are rock solid. But now I'm in this world of entrepreneurism and business owners. And I don't know tangibly how the impacts extend through all the people I've influenced thus far and will continue to. I don't know whether it's passed on or if they volunteered, and helped, coach soccer or the local choir or whatever. I don't have those tangible numbers in the way that I used to have. So it's a little bit more difficult, but I know there's a multiplier that's exponentially bigger than even what I've done in the past.
I spot Bob Hopkins out there. I'm going to turn on Bob's mic and bring him in. Bob, turn on your mic.
Happy to have him.
Bob is in Dallas, Texas. He's the author of this amazing book, Philanthropy Misunderstood. He's probably dancing in the streets in Dallas, but this amazing book is really a very small part of Bob's brilliance and his gifts to humankind. Bob, do you have a comment or a question for our guest today?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this topic, obviously, and I'm excited about you, Mike.
Thanks, Bob.
Very seldom do I hear anybody talk about philanthropy and talk about it in the way you do, which is the way I do as well. And Hugh would definitely tell you that my book is a lot similar to yours, because mine is not about money. It's about the other things that make life worthy. And you know what? Hugh probably doesn't know this, but he's $1 million giver a year. Hugh, you're $1 million giver a year.
Yep. We can talk more about that.
I mean, the information and the inspiration you give to people who go out and make a difference in this world is worth way over $1 million a year. And that's what my book is about. And Mike, I'm doing another book called Philanthropy Understood instead of Misunderstood. And he's going to be in this one with his wife because they do so much. They've done so much over the years, and he's doing so much right now. I mean, I hate to tell you this, but I don't think he gets a lot of money, but he gets a lot of everything else. His soul is enriched and it is full. And, we're going through a bad time right now. I'm kind of down a little bit. I don't have the spark. The spark you hear is kind of a fake one, because I've been watching TV, and Hugh says he does not, but I just can't stay away from it. But, I got a call today from somebody on Facebook who said he wanted to be my friend. I didn't know him, didn't see him, didn't know why. And I get, we all get people who want to be our friends on Facebook, if you're on Facebook. And I asked him who he was and how come he was attracted to me. And he said, because he read about me and heard about me. And I thought, well, that's not the good reason for me to accept him. And then I said, tell me about you. And he said, well, I'm a surgeon and I'm in Syria. My wife has just left me and I don't have any money and I've lost my house and I just need a friend. And I thought you could be one. And
Oh,
I thought, you know what? I don't have time to be a friend. But you know, after talking to you, Mike, I'm going to call him back and tell him I want to be his friend because you know what? I think that's the $1 million that you're talking about. And you know, it came to me, and I usually don't say no. And I thought, you know, I just don't have time. But you know what? I do. I have time because I need him to fill me up with the love that I know I'm capable of. And right now, I'm feeling a little loveless. And so I think things come to you, and I think this your book is about that. By the way, there's a book called Give to Live by Doug Lawson. Have you ever heard of him or that book?
I have. I don't have it and haven't read it, but I have heard of it.
I'm going to send you a copy because I have
Oh,
multiple.
lovely.
He's in a nursing home right now, and his associate gave me multiple books to give away, and it changed my life. It started out in 1992, and then he rewrote it in 2003. And I'm going to send it to you. I don't have your information, but I'll get it from you because I see your website here. But anyway, I just want to thank you for being and writing and thinking and feeling and living the way I perceive philanthropy to be.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, thank you. Thank you for the kind words.
That means a lot coming for Bob. He knows it and he's been around. And so Mike is joining the advisory council for CenterVision because we need a brain like this. Bob's one of our advisors and Bob's stepping up. We're going to do an issue of the Nonprofit Performance Magazine. This is of course, Frank
Awesome.
Shankwitz that started Make-A-Wish Foundation, but we're going to have an issue next year on philanthropy. And Bob's shaping it out now. And I imagine you could be a connector, some very significant contributors. So Bob, thank you for weighing in and having really good comments as you always do. So I'm gonna give Mike some final questions. So thank you, Bob, for being here again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike, philanthropy is more than money. Talk about that.
If you start with happiness and you just lead that one, if you ask anybody or any group of people, you say, what is happiness to you? Most people will not rank money in the top 10. They might have some material, interests at some point. But I think that's a little more the essence of it, is the happiness that we derive from being who we are, being human, being part of humankind, being part of society, being culturally important, that we all have this desire ultimately to feel needed and to be important. And when we consider when those needs are met, our joy and our happiness rises. And when you consider that the love of humankind is really the essence of philanthropy, then if our happiness has risen, if we allow that to rise, then we can willingly and generously participate in that love. And so, at the core of it, that's what it means to me, is that, it's about happiness and it's about allowing that to rise so we can give. And when we give, we're giving not just tangible assets, but also in many intangible ways, but are of paramount importance to us ahead of the capital.
Going back to the writings of Napoleon Hill, when he lists in Think and Grow Rich the attributes of wealth, money is number 13 out of 13 because he said it was the least important.
Right.
And people think it's all about the money when it's really not. It's providing value for people. And, there's a lot of things we do that aren't about money. Money is probably, I've never been an expert in money, don't know how to attract it, but I can spend it. But it's probably the result of providing value and having proper relationships. So you mentioned a lot of books and people you work with. Who influenced you the most in your formative years and beyond?
Well, I had some pretty great coaches. I will say, and I look at family, but it's one of my key. Family and focus are my words of the year, and it's about creating family within my business to help people who really are looking for that connection. But when I think of the most influential people, I would say it's been my wife, Sherry. And the reason, and my mother would probably rank as, the top of the list. But where my mother left off in her being a great human being, being the most unconditional giver. And, we talked about a saint. That woman is a saint in a way that is the most underserving and, for herself and giving. But where Sherry came in was to take all that my mom helped create, and my parents both, but my mother in particular, and how the world began to shape me and my lofty ambitions and bring the humanity needed. I'm a pretty driven person. I am personally very important to me how people feel, but I'm busy. I move forward. And when I'm thinking of moving forward, she's the one who reminds me that so-and-so has a birthday tomorrow, that it's important to them and that you need to pay attention to that and to slow down and be patient with what's going on. So as an influence, I would say the now 26 years I've spent with my wife, Sherry, she's probably the most influential person. And I know that you look for external, like I know there's all kinds of, what are the other things? Like what books have you read? Who's influenced you? But I'll tell you, when it comes down to it, she makes me a better human. And I'm not an easy person, and I've not always been easy. I'm the bumpy road, and she's the smooth, clear asphalt. So, she keeps it even for me.
Well, this hour has gone by in a flash, and you're an honest man, giving attribution where it belongs. So thank you for that really heartfelt attribution to the influencer. I'm going to do another sponsor moment, but come back to you for a final thought or a challenge or a tip. What do you want to leave people with? But I mentioned Performance 360, nonprofit performance. We're using that word, but people know the sector that defines the sector. And here's our friend Frank Shankowitz, who was a highway motorcycle patrolman, founded Make-A-Wish Foundation. Our magazine is printed and mailed by one of our sponsors. It's Word Sprint. There's their, oops, get my hand out of the way, wrong hand. Word Sprint. Word Sprint is a print house, but they're a mailing house. But they're really a methodology of how to keep your donors donating. How do you keep your tribe connected? So out of 2.5 million mailings over 20 years, Bill Gilmore and his team have the secret. So you can go to wordsprint.com. How do you keep the relationship alive with your tribe? And 30% of it is the message, 30% is the frequency, and 30% is the right person. Only 10% is the appearance. So if you stay in touch with people, tell them what's happening. What's the impact of your work that's made possible through their dollars? And you tell them what happened, you give them value, you tell them about what's going on. Then at the end of the year, when you say it's time for our annual giving, they're more likely to either give the same or increase their donation and invite others. So wordsprint.com is one of our most valuable sponsors. It's been with us for 7 years of publishing the magazine, and they do valuable work. Mike, what do you want to leave people with today?
I want a bigger picture. So your impact is interstellar. And what does that mean? It means that you can affect places and people and things in a way that you never thought possible. And it can be happening right now. And when you do it with intention, that thing, place, or person can impact others. And so your impact then becomes exponential. And when I work with 100 entrepreneurs over the next decade, and we help them create businesses worth $1 billion, they'll give back 10% of that to charity. And I know that there's a multiplier to that. So I challenge people to seek me out if they're an entrepreneur, become part of that 100, right? And we'll make those differences. And think about the multiplier on 100 million to charity. that's a 10 times easy. But the beauty is that when you consider that impact, it's the lessons you teach your kids that pass on from generation to generation. The best philanthropists I ever met were the people who said it was always that way in our house. And so make it all the way in your house the same way, so your kids can pass that on, and know that you can always have that exponential impact. And just join me, become part of this cosmic ripple effect I'm bringing on for everybody.
MikeSkrypnek.com. Thank you for being our guest and giving us such useful information today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me, Hugh.
Thank you.